I'm going to talk to you about methodologies for tackling disinformation on social media and to present you findings from the project of Verity, and specifically from the task 1.4, that is about social network analysis. But before we proceed to the findings, let's see why it is so important to I will present you some numbers that 59% of EU individuals using social networks in 2023, and countries with the highest user are Denmark, Cyprus, and Hungary. 26% of people in EU uses social media platforms and blogs to access news. TV dominates with 75%. Online social networks and blogs are the second most used source of information, 29%, about science and technologies after television. It is indicative that 14% of people in EU believe that social media are not a trustworthy source, and another indicative number is that 25% of the tweets in the 5 months of the 2016 US presidential elections were either fake news, either extremely biased news. And please, okay, and please, let's see this comparison that is very interesting between the world population, the social media users worldwide, while from 2017 to 2023, the world population increased by 0.2 billion users. The number of social media users was almost doubled from 2.73 billions to almost 5 billions. And why this is very important to, next slide, please. Why social media is a fertile environment for fake news? It's because of the three main characteristics, the three V's, the volume, the variety, and the velocity. Next, please. And we implemented for as social media data lacks of the demographics data, we implemented an analysis from the Eurobarometer, the last Eurobarometer, and I present you some major findings. The use of social media to learn about science and technology is more common among women than men, 5%, by 5%. The younger the respondents are, the more likely they are to opt for social media to receive science and technology news. And social media users have a higher tendency to believe in disinformation and conspiracy theories. On the graph, in the graph, we see that we see the rank of countries using social media for science and technology news. On the top three, we see Cyprus, Greece, and Lithuania. Next, please. Some of the methodologies that we use for tackling disinformation on social media is, and we use for in the Verity project, is assessing the credibility of information on social media, social network analysis techniques, quantitative and content analysis of the messages, and applying AI algorithms. The last method, it is just a suggestion for creating tools embedded in social network platforms. Next, please. We attempted to address a few questions, which are: how can information sources be assessed and as reliable and unreliable? Who has the greatest influence on the public? What are the characteristics of fake news posts, and how do users interact with misinformation? What feelings does it involve? For this reason, we examined the dataset from the Twitter or X platform, as long as it was free, and we mined data regarding COVID-19 vaccination. Next, please. Regarding the evaluation of credibility of social media, we were based on fact checkers platforms such as PolitiFact, Fact Checkers, and Media Bias Fact Check. We used Media Bias Fact Check, and all these platforms are organizations, journalistic organizations with evaluations based on specific criteria and methodology that are in the context of the standards of international organizations like European Fact-Checking Standards Network and International Fact-Checking Network. Next, please. Okay, sorry. Yes, the finding of our project is that during the COVID-19 vaccination period, in one in four messages on social networks came from an unreliable source. This is the finding of verity from the methodology of evaluating the credibility of source. Next, please. Sorry, Mattia, can you go just one slide? Yeah. Regarding the social network analysis techniques, we actually this analysis is a set of algorithms that studies the relationship and behavior of users on network. We can identify users who disseminate fake news. Social network analysis algorithms contribute in the assessment of the impact of those accounts, examining their connectivity and their place in the network. And we can detect communities that help to address the issue of disinformation to specific groups. The graph depicts our results from the trustworthy information, from the trustworthy post. We see clusters around sources, journalistic sources, and our finding, the main finding of verity is that users engaging with trustworthy sources appear more likely to engage with information from multiple sources, while users engaging with untrustworthy sources appear slightly more clustered around single sources. Next, please. A very critical finding is that is related to the parameter of time. Overall, in the vaccination period, untrustworthy messages with great number of likes and reshares were at slightly lower levels than trustworthy ones. But however, it is very important to notice that at the beginning of the critical vaccination period, untrustworthy messages had significantly more likes and reshares. Next, please. Using the methodology of analyzing the content of fake news, we can analyze massive of social media posts that can reveal the topics of high interest, such as conspiracy theories. We can create word clouds that are depicts the frequency of the terms in the messages, and the word cloud shows very popular topics, such as the conspiracy theory of Big Pharma, as we see in the word cloud, and also web sources that disseminate fake news, such as the ONNN, a web page, a web page known for spreading conspiracy theories. Next, please. Of course, we can use AI techniques on social media for addressing disinformation. Massive analysis of social media data using AI techniques can reveal what causes intense sentiment to the public. We can use also stance detection and subjectivity detection algorithms, and also AI models can identify bots. The major topic is that untrustworthy messages evoke negative sentiment that can be detected from deep learning algorithms, identifying the messages of high concern. And we can see the next slide, something representative of this analysis. We see a graph that depicts the sentiment of users during the vaccination period, while from -1 to 1 is the negative to positive sentiment. We see that most of the users had a slightly positive attitude stance for the vaccination, but it's very critical and very important to notice some points that, for example, are the most negative or the most positive. Please click, Mattia. Okay, just for example, this one, where we noticed that there was an intense negative sentiment and we tried to find what happened there, and it was a specific post that provoked negative sentiment, and it was related to COVID-19 vaccine and death that was provoked from the vaccine. That was fake news. Next, please. Happened. Okay.
Panagiotis, do I need to go back to any slides because it seems you were frozen for a couple of seconds?
Okay. Now let's go to the recommendation slide.
Okay. This one or the previous one?
The previous one.
This one.
Yeah,
Yes, we
okay.
continue from here.
Thank you. After all these results, these findings, we can proceed to recommendations to policymakers, which are political ideology seems to be one of the major factors that influence people fostering skepticism towards science. Politicians must act in a concerted way to strengthen trust in science by leaving scientific issues away from political expediencies. The high circulations of fake anti-scientific news on social networks reveals the urgent need to educate the public about the proper use of social networks by fostering skepticism. Training programs related to the proper use of social media could help the public to cultivate a critical mindset. Also, communities and groups of people may be identified from the social network analysis and the Eurobarometer analysis, then that can be more vulnerable to disinformation. Policymakers can approach with specific actions for these groups. Next, please. Social media platforms should integrate mechanisms for making available the information of trustworthiness. Disinformation is a particularly worrying phenomenon in times of crisis, especially in the beginning of a crisis. Debating fake news is crucial. Makers need to have quick reflexes in critical times. Policymakers could effectively enhance trust in science through social media, recruiting influential persons or organizations. And finally, social media companies have adopted strict and more commercialized strategy regarding the access to data. Researchers we face a very important issue of the data availability, and the Free Social Network as an initiative from EU and academics supporting freedom of speech and ensuring the democratization of social media. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions.